And these are not that different. So basically, they're just a more compact way of writing functions. And that's one of the regrets that Brendan Eich has, is that function is such a long word. And the problem is with code you're writing these days, with promises and callbacks and everything, you're using a lot of functions, and they really clutter stuff up. So I think he said that if he could go back in time, he would actually change the name to FN, so that'd be more compact. But again, we can't add that to ECMAScript 6 because there are a lot of, or some variables out there that are FN, so it doesn't work, which is a shame because it would have been nice syntax if this was FN. And so this is kind of borrowed from CoffeeScript, and the cool thing is that it's shorter in two ways. So on one hand, you don't have the function, or actually 3 ways. So you don't have to add the parentheses, you can omit the function thing, and you don't have to return a value. So it's shorter. And if you're producing for a lot of stuff, especially if you're using array methods such as map, you get very compact syntax. And if you're working with promises, this is brilliant because your code looks a lot nicer. Firefox already supports it, so you can already use it in Firefox. And yeah, it's just very, very nice. And another thing is that who's done that, or this, or whatever, who's used the pattern shown here? Who's used it? All right, so that is something that, so the problem is that if you use a function in here, and you'd love to refer to this, but you can't, because every function has its own this. So it's shadowed. And that's why I have to do this weird dance up here. And with arrow functions, they are true functions. They're not this kind of hybrid thing. Because at the moment, functions like this thing up here is either a constructor or a callback or a method. And arrows are just simply callbacks, true functions. They don't have their own this, which is why this code becomes more compact and much nicer. And even it occasionally still trips me up. And now, for example, when I do for each, and with arrow functions, that problem goes away. Classes. Classes are kind of not that exciting a feature, but on the other hand, it's, well, as you know, there's quite a few libraries who actually add classes or like nicer syntax for specifying constructors, who add that to JavaScript. But the problem is that every single, or almost every single framework has its own version of kind of nicer syntax for inheritance. And then you can't exchange code between the different frameworks anymore. IDEs have so if you have a good editor, it has a really hard time to find out what actually the constructors are. And with ECMAScript 6, you have classes built in. And well, as I said, it's pretty amazing that JavaScript is so flexible that you can easily add it via a library. But here, it's just more compact, and code will be easy to exchange, and it'll be great for IDEs as well. So this is not spectacular. This is like a point, a class here. It's a bit more compact because you don't have to do the function thing, and the syntax is very similar to object literals, to this method definition in object literals. So that's not like a tremendous improvement, but this one is. So if you create a class color point that is a subclass of point, then you do this really nasty thing in ECMAScript 5, and you don't even know color point, what does it extend? Where is it in the code? Do you see it? What does color point extend? Can you see it in the code? Well, you can see it here, can't you? You can see it here, and you can see it down here. So it's even like redundantly And you can see it down here as well. So it's redundantly in several places, and it's kind of hard to find. And here it's nicer. So you don't have to repeat yourself. You call the superconstructor, which is done hard-coded down here. You do it like this. And this is how you call an overridden method. So much nicer than this monstrosity down here. So with subclassing, you do actually benefit a lot from classings. Modules, that's another boring feature that's cool. So as you may or may not know, there are now like several really nice module systems that people have built within the language. So the main formats are common JavaScript and AMD, the asynchronous module definition. And so the AMD, the most popular kind of system that uses is Require.js, and Common.js is used by Node.js with a tiny extension. And the thing is, these two module systems are competing, and there's a fragmentation, and then you have Bauer, and you have NPM, and it's really very fragmented and quite messy. So bringing modules to ECMAScript 6 is not something shiny, new, and exciting. Well, as I said, it's actually fairly boring, but it makes sure that code can be exchanged easily between frameworks and that there's a single ecosystem for modules. And that single module system is designed to work both in browsers and on servers. So the syntax is very simple. You just write your code down here, and you prefix anything you want to export with this keyword, and that's it. So here you can write your code as if it was a script tag, and whatever you want to export, and this is really nice syntax, you just tag it here. And then the importing is similar to the structuring syntactically, and here you're saying, I'm importing a single entity from this module. And here and this is a bit more complicated syntax, lets you import the whole library as an object, and then you call it like this. And in the future, any new browser API that gets added will just be a module. You'll import a module, and right now it's like really ugly because it's always a global variable in some way. And in the future, those will be modules. And right now you have JSON and JSON.something, stringify, and so on. You have math.max and other math stuff. And those are basically modules simulated via objects. So you're kind of abusing objects as modules in ECMAScript 5, and prime example is math, and in the future math will be a module. So that'll be really nice and really clean. And yeah, let's skip this because it's not as exciting. And then you have template strings, and that improves what you can do with kind of stringish literals. And so two applications are if you can interpolate, and shells support this feature, Perl, Python has a way, Ruby certainly supports it. So and this is nice. So you can actually put values in there and have string interpolation. And template strings can also span multiple lines, and the funny thing is that syntax highlighters have not yet caught up. So you get, so syntax highlighting is weird, and it's challenging because inside this there can be any expression. So when it comes to syntax highlighting, they'll have quite a bit of work ahead of them. And then you have, and just very briefly, I'm not really going to explain how it works, but you can actually put something in front of a template literal, and that can be used to implement kind of domain-specific languages within JavaScript. So it can help you with, say, templating, with escaping stuff, and this is a real quick example of something that template strings help with, and because regexp is a library that brings a lot of really nice regular expression features to JavaScript. So you should really check it out. It works quite well in ECMAScript 5. And what you have here, so or maybe I'll ask you before I go into detail, who has used regular expressions amongst you? All right, very good. So you know groups, you know these parentheses and to extract stuff. And that's problematic because you refer to groups via numbers. And what you would like to refer actually to this, this first piece is you'd love to give it a name. And with xregexp, you can give it a name. And under the hood, it compiles to normal regular expressions. So it's just almost or basically as fast as built-in regular expressions. And so there are two advantages that template strings bring to this kind of custom kind of regular expression that this library adds to ECMAScript 6, and that is the backslash. If that was a string, you'd have to do the double backslash, because first it's a backslash in a string literal, and then later it's a backslash in a regular expression. And whenever you do this kind of thing, specify something via strings, template strings help you, and here, this is really the backslash of the regular expression. And you have multiple lines. So the multiple lines here, again, are really nice. And these are comments of the library. These are not, this is something, a different syntax and a comment. So you have a tiny little language within JavaScript, and template strings help with building these tiny little languages that are embedded inside JavaScript, which is nice. So the standard libraries gets more stuff as well, and maps are a big relief. Because right now, whenever you want to map keys to values, what are you using? Objects. And what's the problem with objects? Many problems. Yeah, I heard several answers, and they're all correct. So the problem is you can only map from strings to values, which is painful. And the other problem is that there's several pitfalls. So inheritance comes into play. You can't use the key __ proto, which may come in from some source. So you may read a key from a file, and if it's accidentally __ proto __, then the object doesn't work as a map anymore. And there's actually an example of Google Docs. For a while in Google Docs, if you opened a new Google Doc, a word processing document, and started the text of the Google Doc with __ proto __, the whole thing would crash because it used an object as a map in the background, and because the dunder proto was a special key in objects. And so that crashed Google software, and I think they're good programmers. So, and with maps, the problems go away. And so what you have, and you can use, because you can use any key, and you can even use any value as a key. So here we're using an object, and we set the entry whose key is that object up here. We set it to 123. And we set it, and then we retrieve it, and we make sure that it exists in the map. Does the map still have this entry? Then we delete it, and then we find out, okay, the map doesn't have it anymore. And this is brilliant as well. Here you use the structuring to iterate over the keys of the map. And I really like that. So sets is similar. You can use maps to implement sets. I think that's what may often go on under the hood. And the nice thing about sets is that they are iterable. So you can use the spread operator to turn a set into an array, and the parameter of a set is actually an array as well. So what this little snippet here does, it creates an array whose elements are unique. So this line here, it removes duplicates from the array. And this is how you, because it's iterable, this is how you iterate over the set. Then you have object assign, which is similar to underscore extends. So it merges source 1 into target, then it merges source 2 into target. And so this is what that looks like in action. So you have an object that has a single property foo, and then you merge another object that has a single property bar into object. And object is the result, is modified, and it's also returned by assign. So so afterwards, object the property foo and the property bar. And you can use it. Well, let's skip that. Let's skip it. So you can use it to one of several use cases, and you can they're very easy to figure out. You can look at them in the slides. Is if you want to, this is how you traditionally add methods to a prototype in ECMAScript 5, and with object assign, you can't just kind of mix in this object literal. You have the nice syntax for the methods, and these two methods are merged into some class.prototype. So that's a quick way, and you don't have to mention some class.prototype all the time. You don't have to mention function, so that cleans it up. Then there are new string methods. These are, I like them. Like, some people think they're like too much, but I really like them. Java has them, and okay, especially the ends with. If you do that with index of, so the alternative is to do an index of. And so the ends with is really nice, starts with, so I occasionally wish I already had them, and contains is another one. No, that has been renamed to includes, so that's includes. Oh, right. Repeat is another one. You can repeat a string. Well, those are just tiny tool methods, but other languages have them, and you want to have more tool stuff in JavaScript. You don't want the standard library to be so Spartan, and you want a little bit more of comfort. Array methods, those allow you to find an element in an array, and it returns the element. This allows you to find an element, to find the index of an element. And both times you can use arrow functions, and so here you're saying find the first element that is even, and 8 is the first even element, so it's returned here, and the index of 8 is 2. So that's a quick way of using like a Boolean function to find an element. Loops and iteration. So who of you know what an iterator is? Who've heard that one? Okay, very nice. Or a database cursor, a cursor in a database. All right. So but I can't explain it. You don't have to know what it means. I don't want to exclude the other ones who haven't used it yet. So what it basically does, if you have an object, and the object has something inside of it. So whenever you implement a data structure, you have something inside of you. You have values inside of you. And you want to get to those values. And we have already seen the for of loop. You want to be able to, if you write your own data structure, say a sorted set, a set whose elements are sorted, then you would love for of to be able to peek what's inside your data structure. And iterables and iterators let you do that. So JavaScript lets you tell the language how to get to the insides, and then the built-in for-of loop actually supports your own custom-built data structure. And the iterable is, so the pattern or the protocol is when you have an object whose innards, whose inside, you want to make available to the public, that object or the has to have, it can be inherited, it has to have a method that whose name is, and that's a symbol, is iterate. And that method returns the actual iterator, and the iterator returns is kind of a pointer into the data structure that returns the elements one after another. And that's still a bit abstract, but it's, I'm sorry. So but I think it kind of helps when we look at code. So what this function does is we have several values. So this is an array. And we would like to use the for-of loop over these values. So what will this one print out? It will print out first ini, then mini, then miny. And what this function returns is a new object that is iterable. And it is iterable because it has symbol.iterator as a property key. And then, so this has to return an iterator. And the iterator is always called with next. As long as it still has elements, as long as there's still something left in values at index, at the index. As long as that's the case, you return an object with the property value. So you return a value from these up here. And if the index is beyond, is the length or higher, then you return done. And that allows you, and any kind of data structure that implements this method becomes iterable, and you can use the for-of loop over it. So there are a lot of nice tool functions you can write like that. And the for-of loop replaces for-in, which is very problematic. So if you can, don't use it. It also replaces for-each, which is not as fast. I still like it, but it's for-of is a better alternative. And it works, and for-of works for anything that's iterable. And as we've seen, things that are iterable are arrays, sets, even arguments is iterable. So for-of, you can use for-of over arguments if you want to. And in the future, all array-like DOM objects will become iterable. So you will be able to iterate via for-of over anything that's returned by the DOM, and you know how unpleasant that is at the moment. So this is how you use the for-of loop to loop over an array. So that's how it should be. And it's pretty amazing that JavaScript doesn't have such a loop already. And here's because for-in is just weird. And here is how things should work. And then you can even do this one. And this is, again, the structuring. So what array.entries returns is a sequence of pairs. So it returns key-value pairs, and the key is the index, and the value is the element. So it returns it returns two arrays in this case. The first array is 0, hello. The second array is 1, world. And via the structuring, you can directly access the elements of each of the arrays that entries returns. And so now you can really very nicely iterate over arrays. And it works for sets as well. So if you have created a set, you can iterate over that as well, as we've already seen. Generators. I think Yeah, okay, well, we have a little bit more time. I think I can go into a little bit more detail. So first, I will explain how generators work. But if you don't fully understand what that means, don't worry, because you will see applications. And you will see later how the code within a generator is much more compact than something you write by hand. So then you can you see what it's good for, and you don't necessarily have to understand now how they work. So what it is it's basically a function that you can suspend and resume. So here you return a 0 and then you pause. Then you return a 1 and then you pause. Then you return a 2 and then you pause. And here, and this is done when you call the function, you get an object, and that is the remote control for this function. And at first, it hasn't started yet. And then you call the method next, and you first get back the first value that is yielded, and then there's a pause. And then you see when you call the remote control for the second time, execution continues later at this location. And so on until you're over, until it's passed, and then it says done. And the nice thing is that the next thing, that is like an iterator. So what the generator actually returns is an iterator. So you can actually use it. So this, you'd be able to use a for-of loop over the generator. So you could say for let x of gen object. So you could iterate with a for-of loop over gen object, and the for-of loop would first have a 0, then a 1, and then a 2. So generators are, so one application of generators is as a much nicer way of implementing an iterator. So this is kind of well, not really very pretty code that we've used to implement something iterable beforehand, and this is how simple it becomes afterwards. Because all you're saying here is yield. So you have a for-of loop over the values that you want that you want to iterate over, and then every time next is called, you return another v that's inside here. And you can just take a step back and say, well, this is very complicated, and this is a very compact way of like pausing and returning values. And so this is a little tool function that as well is very, very easy to write via generators. What you want is, and unfortunately ECMAScript 6 doesn't have this tool function yet, you want to get the key value pairs inside this object. So, and with maps, you can also do it with maps, but so with maps it's possible, and maps will be much more used in that capacity, much more than objects. But if you want to have this kind of, if you want to iterate over key value pairs in objects, this is a tool function that we have to write ourselves. And so, and how we do this is very, very simple. We just extract the keys of the object. Then we have a normal for loop. We could use for-of as well here if we wanted to. And then we extract the value, and this is wrong. All right. Oh, is it? Nah, oh, God. You should, coding in front of an audience is never a good idea. So yeah, this is, I did it properly. So and you yield, And this is what gives you this sequence of pairs that you then print out here. First foo 3, then bar 7. So this is how you do that, by a yield. And then, and that is something I just want to, I don't want to necessarily explain, but just very quickly show to you. Can you guess what this code does? So what it does, it reads one file, then it reads another file, and once the reading is done of both, it renders them. And it does all of that in a web browser. So these are files that are loaded asynchronously. And if you wanted to implement that at the moment, you may, well, you're probably going to use a library, but if you don't want to use a, if you don't want to use a library, you can use XML HTTP request. And that is nasty. So any kind of asynchronous programming is always a bit tricky. And here what you do is you get this synchronous syntax thanks to generators. A synchronous syntax for something that is deeply, deeply asynchronous. And thanks to yield, this thing here, the promise all, that pauses until it's done. And once it is done, the function is restarted, is like unpaused, and then foo and bar are filled in, and you can start your, you can continue with your code. And you can even catch an exception if something happens here or something happens here. So, and this is quite amazing because this is asynchronous code written in a synchronous style. And because you can pause and wake up the function once the results are available, because you can pause, that's why generators are great for this application. So, let's look at the countdown. How much more time do I have? Pardon me? All right, okay, yeah, that's good. All right, 40 more minutes. So it's possibly interesting for you as well. So the various other features. So there are promises. Promises help with asynchronous programming. Proxies are a more obscure feature that is interesting for libraries mainly. And they are about metaprogramming, and these are embedded links. So if these things interest you, you can click on the links that are like linked in the downloadable PDF file, and there's more information on those. There'll be better support for Unicode, which is going to be great for internationalization, and there will be tail call optimization. If you don't know what that is, it's not as important, but it's a lot of people are very happy about this. Functional programming languages can, basically it's a way of a function recursively calling itself a lot of times without increasing the stack. So for when you do functional programming, this is nice. It's really nice to have. Timetable. ECMAScript 6 at the moment is basically done. The feature set is frozen. Right now, there's only minor corrections, mainly like typos and really small bugs. In March, the publication process starts, and in June 2015, we'll have a formal publication. But that's not that important because features are already appearing in browsers, and so it becoming a standard is not as important as the spec already existing and being quite solid at the moment. And the other option, and this is really nice, that if you want to use ECMAScript 6 right now, and a lot of people are already trying that out and are very happy with it, is to compile ECMAScript 6 for ECMAScript 5, and we'll probably do that for a long time. Because old browsers, they're still out there. And 3 important ones are TypeScript by Microsoft, Tresor by Google, and 6to5 by 2 Australian developers, or yeah, and with more contributors. And 6to5 is really nice. So at the moment, 6to5 is incredibly popular. And the next version of Angular, Angular 2, is based on Tresor. So Google is really pushing Tresor as well. And TypeScript is cool because it's roughly ECMAScript 6 plus optional type annotations. And that makes people in the enterprise very happy. And so this kind of optional typing is kind of a middle ground. And in the past, it was like JavaScript developers on one side, and then you had the enterprise people on the other side. And the enterprise people really passionately hated JavaScript. And with TypeScript, you have something in the middle that you can actually like as a JavaScript developer because it's still basically JavaScript. And it's even future-proof because it's the future right now. And on the other hand, enterprise developers, you get really positive feedback from enterprise developers because they're like, now they're seeing class and so on, so that makes them happy. So Tresor and 6to5 are ways to compile, and you can compile it statically via build tools, and you can generate one of the existing module formats or kind of a new format that has a custom module loader that's an ECMAScript 6 API implemented on ECMAScript 5. And so this is what you use, I think, very often in production. You compile it to something that is relatively nice looking, in most cases, relatively nice looking ECMAScript 5 code. But during development, you can also do it dynamically, and so then you don't have to have a compile process. You can immediately directly use ECMAScript 6 in the browser, and it's just compiled on the fly. And there are a few module systems that have plugins for compiling ECMAScript 6 to ECMAScript 5. So if you're using Browserify, or so Browserify supports common JavaScript, so the Node.js module format, and some of the Node.js standard library for browsers. Webpack supports CommonJS and has built-in support for AMD as well. JSPM is a new, more ECMAScript 6 inspired package manager. And with all these, you have very nice solutions that you can use today to actually write ECMAScript 6 code and modules and have a very clean environment that is already today future-proof. So the source code you write will one day, it won't be compiled anymore, and in a few years, it'll just be clean native code and no compilation will be there anymore. And yeah, how much more time do we have? I'm sorry. Okay, 10, because the countdown let me down. So let's very quickly look at how the JSPM and the other package managers, they are very similar. So what I will show you now is, if you're saying, well, today I'm feeling curious, I want to try ECMAScript 6. So this is how you do it. First you do an npm install, that is a package manager, and it installs another package manager, but it doesn't make sense. So this is how you install JSPM, and it's written in JavaScript. So and that's just a really nice new world, and that's surprisingly one of the great Node.js features. You'd think that Node.js is for servers, but one killer feature of Node.js is that it allows you to develop for the shell in JavaScript. So that now many JavaScript build tools are written in JavaScript. And this is another project that is just written in JavaScript. TypeScript is implemented in JavaScript and just installed in the same manner. So this is how you install JSPM, and this you'll only do once. And the next 2 lines you'll do for every new project. So you create, well, you want to create the directory, but it already exists. So it already exists, and you cd into it. And then you do a JSPM init. And then there's several config data. You tell JSPM where the code is. You tell JSPM where it puts modules that it downloads for you. So the purpose is you write your own code in ECMAScript 6, but you still want to use other libraries that are out there that exist. So underscore is one example, or Lodash. So other libraries that exist, you want to install those, and this is where they go. And then you have a config file, and then you can decide between Tresor and 625. And when it comes to installing software that already exists, JSPM is very convenient because you can either install a library that already exists on NPM, or you can directly install something from GitHub. And additionally, so it's you can install something from the JSPM registry that has several popular libraries already set up. So this is all you need to do in order to have jQuery. So no weird script tag and so on. It's all, and jQuery become just another module with module syntax. And the next step is, so now you've installed stuff that you need. You've installed Lodash, you've installed jQuery twice, but this is only for demonstrational purposes. So so all you want is 2 libraries, and those are Lodash and jQuery. And now it's time to write your own code, and here you import kind of into this underscore variable. You import it from this file here, from this submodule. You import jQuery, and you also import underscore. And yeah, so the syntax, yeah, okay, right. And then you export something. So this is your import, this is you exporting something. So this is actually a module, and this is the main program. So this is where like everything starts. This is the main program, and the main program uses another module that you've defined up here. And then you call the function that you import from this other module. And so now you've written 2 ECMAScript 6 modules, and that is just nice, like importing jQuery like this and having installed jQuery like in a nice, convenient fashion beforehand. And then all that remains to be done is first you include via a script tag the module loader, then you include the config file, and this is how you start everything up. So this is where things start, and this is where you import the main file, and that's it. And other than that, you're staying in pure ECMAScript 6, and yeah, so and you can decide if you want to compile on the fly at runtime, or if you want to have it as a build step that compiles it beforehand. All right, ECMAScript 6. What are the takeaways? Many features are now already available in engines, and this is a link to the compatibility table that's really well done by Ajax. And it can be used today if you compile to ECMAScript 5, as we've seen. And in my opinion, the biggest impact on the community will have, the most boring features will be, in many ways, the most interesting ones, or will have the biggest impact on the community, because the community is currently fragmented around classes and around modules, and ECMAScript 6 will bring harmony in that regard. So, thank you. Let's hope the rhino doesn't bite you. And this is a blog post that is almost like a book now. It links to a lot of in-depth material. It gives you a quick overview of the language. And some of the features, it's really worth it to dig a little bit deeper into it so that you, and now after having used ECMAScript 6 for a long time, it's really amazing how everything fits together, because you have generators work well together with promises, arrow functions work well together with promises, destructuring works well together with the new for-of loop, and so everything fits together nicely. And I'm really, well, obviously it's not perfect because nothing, well, I'm going to sound a bit cynic, but nothing is ever perfect in the real world, but I'm still very, very happy with ECMAScript 6, and I hope you'll be too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Axel. Herzlichen Dank. And
that was German, by the way. Because you speak a little bit of German, right?
Ja, ein bisschen.
Alright, sehr gut, sehr gut. Weitermachen.
Thanks. У нас есть пара минут на вопросы. А так, вообще, запомните, как выглядит Аксель. Потом вы найдете его в перерыве где-нибудь.
Пожалуйста.
Да. Да, я забыл сказать, что Аксель очень любит языки и отлично владеет английским, немецким, естественно, французским, испанским и учит русский сейчас. Да, ну давайте вернемся к ECMAScript 6 или 2015. Пожалуйста, вопросы. Есть вопрос?
Did he just say something bad about me? No, no.
Hi, Axel.
Hello.
My English is so weird. Sorry.
It's what? What did you say?
What? I have a question about ECMAScript 6
okay,
classes.
now I understand it. I'm sorry. Yeah, this wasn't meant as a joke. I'm sorry.
Yeah, cool.
I do understand you, except for the first sentence. Everything, you speak well.
Cool. I have a question about ECMAScript 6 classes. Now I can use class methods. It's cool. And in my project, I use ECMAScript 6 classes with Backbone, and I have a problem. I can define methods and inherit that methods to childs, but I can't inherit properties because Backbone.
That sounds like. Sorry for interrupting you. Ask me the question later offline. I don't think if we go into that right now, I think people will possibly get bored. So after everything is done, come to me and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think it'll be easier.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
Так, да, есть вопрос рядом.
Hi Axel, thank you for cool presentation. I have a small question about 65 project and maybe Tracer. Is it production ready? Have somebody used in production code right now? How it's solid? Or just to play around and that's all?
I asked on Twitter who used ECMAScript 6 in production. I got quite a few answers. And so Tresor is making rapid progress because, well, as I said, it'll be used by Google for Angular too, so they have no choice. It has to work eventually, and it's already quite good. But at this very moment, 6.5 seems to be more popular, and I think initially you will use ECMAScript 6 very carefully. It may be just classes and modules at the beginning, and then after a while you'll become more courageous and use more. And And what's very nice is that both 625 and Tresor, they have interactive command lines. Oh, my notebook is ready. I would have shown something. Is it? Okay. So, Zli. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll. So I relied on others to tell me if it's already. There are to finish my answer. There are playgrounds out there where you can interactively enter ECMAScript 6 code and then see on the other half of the page what ECMAScript 5 code it's compiled to, and that's a really nice because it's just a web page you go to, and then you just try out and then see what it's compiled to, and you see that especially 625 produces very nice ECMAScript 5 code, and you can just play with ECMAScript 6 right now.
Thank you.
Так, ребята, у вас готово уже?
How angry are you?
У нас есть еще, наверное, на один вопрос буквально, да. Вот молодой человек там. Я прошу прощения.
Hi, Axel. Just a small question. I noticed that more than 10 new keywords. Maybe I, in my current code, have variable let, have variable export. Maybe I fool. Have variable import. Maybe this new break my old code?
The thing is that a lot of these keywords are already reserved right now. And if you looked at ECMAScript 5, there's a very long list of keywords that were already reserved. So if you use those in ECMAScript 6, you'll get errors. And for let, let is the one thing where they had to be more clever. And I've written a blog post that explains one JavaScript. And if you Google for one JavaScript or look at it, it's like one of my newer blog posts. It's explained what tricks they did to enable let. And let is in strict mode, let is reserved. And in non-strict mode, it's not reserved, but they did a little trick, and then that works as well. So it works surprisingly well because a lot of keywords are already reserved in ECMAScript 5. Okay, I'll hand over the stage to you. Thank you.
Так, наш следующий докладчик. Вы, те из вас, кто были вчера на воркшопе по WebGL, уже знакомы с Мартином. Вы уже знаете, что это очень милый, открытый, дружелюбный, доброжелательный человек. И кроме этого, он любит играть по технологиям. И WebGL — это тема его доклада сегодня, а также только появляющиеся, обретающие форму стандарта WebVR, то есть Virtual Reality для веб. Насчет WebVR. У нас тут